Put them at a table together, and what do you get? You get the sum of their fears. But here in Texas in 2025, I believe if you get the most committed activists, the most steadfast citizen, the most engaged moms, and the most visionary governor, and put them in this room right now together, what do we get? We get the sum of their hopes. And it is in that hope that I welcome you to our 2025 Texas Policy Summit, because we are building the future right here, right now, and I'm so grateful to be doing it with each and every one of you. Thank you very much. All right, seeing our surprise special guest this morning. And so, you know, I hope everyone in their lifetimes finds a true friend, and everyone in their lifetimes finds a trusted mentor and counselor, and everyone in their lifetimes finds an example for emulation and admiration both. Everyone has these figures, I hope ought to, because to do so is a great fortune. But I'm more fortunate than most, because for me, I have all three of these figures, a friend, a mentor, and an example, in one person, Brooke Rollins. Brooke, who, I don't know what she was thinking, in 2007, hired me after a hasty meeting in a love-filled conference room. And for 2 decades, she's 2 decades later, is now serving as her 33rd Secretary of Agriculture. And despite her well-deserved and well-earned ascent from think tank entrepreneur to White House head of domestic policy and now to cabinet secretary, she is still the same person, the same friend, the same mentor and example she has always been. I don't know how she finds the time. I was talking to her like 11 o'clock last night, figuring out if she was going to be here. I was like, don't you have more important things to do, Brooke? But she's here, and that's Brooke. She always shows up. And if you know a good number of high-powered officials, you know how rare that is. Most people at the pinnacle of public life are marked in some way by those who they have left behind. But the goodness and greatness of Brooke Rollins is that she is marked by those she elevates. That is the greatest testimony to her character and quality I can give. It's also a signpost marking her presence and purpose in national life now. When our founders established this republic 250 years ago, they envisioned a society of merit in which the only aristocracy was that of talent, and in which the first ranks of society and governance would be occupied by those who earned it. I can't think of any better example of the success of their vision than this. The fact that a girl from a single parent household in small town, Texas town, through hard work and vision, rose to become a confidant, a friend, and a cabinet secretary to the President of the United States. America works. And now is my pleasure to give you the living proof of America at work, Brooke Rollins.
I mean, it's good to be home. Y'all know I get a little emotional every now and then, especially when I am here in Texas and here with my people. My people, you are my people. My mom is here as a state representative. What happened? I'll tell you what happened. We had a governor who refused to say no and went all in on doing what was right. Governor Abbott, thank you. Thank you. Well, Governor Abbott is extremely gracious because I have jumped in front of his keynote, and I don't want to take any of your time, Governor, but man, I had this little window of time in the week. I was confirmed on Thursday, which seems like 2 years ago. Y'all, it was the coolest thing. I had my whole family there. It was very last minute. We ended up in the gallery of the Senate. Most cabinet appointees don't ask to go sit and watch their vote. But, you know, I said, what the heck? We've got all these great Texans, my whole family coming very last minute, because it happened very last minute. The vote was set. And we got to sit up in the cabinet, and it wasn't lost on me the history, the history that the presidents and the senators and the elected officials who have walked those halls, who have confirmed past cabinet secretaries, who have fought for America, that it was remarkable. And to be able to do that with my family. I was then sworn in a couple hours later by the great Clarence Thomas at the U.S. Supreme Court. And then I immediately went to the USDA and got rid of all the DEI programs, finished all the gender ideology. Said, we're going to right this ship. Those 978 DEI programs, gone. What a joy to be here. But really, this is where it all started. I was walking in and Greg said, I don't know that many of you have been here for all 23 policy summits. And I said, I think Greg Abbott and I have been here for all 23 policy summits. The Liningers, the others. Well, again, what a joy to be here, and I wanted to make every effort. So we were sworn in on Thursday. I went and got rid of lots of bad stuff Thursday night. We headed to Kentucky on Friday. It was really important to me that we get out of Washington in those first 24 hours and we say, America is back. And we are in Washington to support you, the people, that I am, as your 33rd Secretary of Agriculture, will never forget and will in fact put first always our farmers and our ranchers, but everyday Americans that have been lost, not just in the last 4 years, although the last 4 years have been a bit of a disaster. Would y'all agree? My goodness gracious. But really over the course of history, we had that small pause during President Trump the first time, but to be in Kentucky with great American farmers and ranchers on Friday and Saturday. We then went to Kansas on Monday. Yesterday we were in Missouri. I'm kind of popping in and out of Washington, getting rid of more bad stuff in between the different state visits. But to be here with all of you is just so full circle for me. And I'm so grateful. And Governor Abbott, when I left 7 years ago and walked away from the Texas Public Policy Foundation, well, I mean, not really. I never really go away, do I, Greg? But officially walked away to join the last White House. I knew that we had basically one more shot to save this country. And I knew that Texas was in such great hands, first with my people at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, for whom I had served for 15 years before I walked away to go to the White House, but also because of this governor who has been bold and fearless and courageous. And I am forever, forever grateful that we keep putting Texas and making Texas the model for not only America, but for the world. And Governor Abbott, you have done a remarkable job in that. And I mean that so sincerely. Thank you. Well, I look out across all of you here and you who have come, most of you from Texas, many of you, though, from America to see how we do it here in Texas, and even a few of you from across some great oceans all across the world. And I see the success of a vision that was incepted long ago. But I see something even more important than that, because what's happening here now is ultimately not about the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and not even about our great governor and our great lieutenant governor and others, our elected officials. But to paraphrase Churchill, we, TPPF, Governor Abbott, all of us together are giving the roar. But as Churchill said, it is the lion's spirit, the lion's heart, the spirit of freedom that is in the people. And that's you. That's every one of you here. That's each of you who burns for freedom, who loves our history and our heritage, who knows it must be defended at all costs, and who, most importantly, does something about it. I don't mean attending conferences, lots of conferences and conferences, but I mean doing it for the right reason, as a pathway to fellowship that then inexorably leads to action. You understand it, and it's why you're here. I know that because otherwise y'all have a lot of other good things to be doing. If you have worked in the trenches for years upon years, like some of us in this room, or if you are a newcomer to the cause of liberty, which I know a lot of you are today, especially our younger crew, you are equally welcome, and you are equally my brother and my sister in the cause of reclaiming our country. I bring you a message today directly from our new president, Donald J. Trump, who has seen your labors and seen your hope and knows you expect both in this new day in America to be vindicated in full. I will tell you this, help is here. You have won and America is back. And you know, it doesn't mean that there isn't a tremendous amount of work to do, because there is. There is a lot of it. A huge, huge amount to be able to sweep away years and generations of the left's ceaseless efforts to undermine our republic and end our way of life. The bad news is that they achieved much and the task before us is immense. The good news is our president is with us, our hearts are strong, and we are Americans. Let me be more specific. For this room and this audience only, don't tell anyone, but what I'm about to say I think is kind of amazing. We here in Texas are the most American Americans. Because we are Texans and we never let a little thing like overwhelming odds or an improbable cause get in our way. After all, think back to the year of our independence. Think back to 1836. Remember how many battles the Texans won that year. None of them except one. Texas lost every battle except that last one, and then that won it all. Our president is, of course, a native New Yorker, and you'd think that would be about as un-Texan as it gets. No offense to my friends from New York. But let me tell you, from now nearly a decade of working with him, that he has the biggest Texan heart. This is a man who knows what it's like to be counted out, to face impossible odds, including 1,000 years in prison, to have every obstacle thrown in his way and prevail. And not just politically prevail, the sort of man who takes a bullet and immediately stands and yells, "Fight, fight, fight." It's incredible, incredible. President Trump possesses a physical but also a moral courage that our founders would have recognized as the prerequisites for leadership. He brings all that to his governance now, and when he leaves office in January 2029, he'll have left it all on the field. And I sincerely believe he will be counted among America's greatest presidents. Who agrees with me on that? Yeah. I think we need to look no further at that than the pace of action and activity he has already demanded and for which he has set the example. Today, February 19th, is exactly 30 days since President Trump took office. Can you believe it? It feels like about 10 years ago. 30 days. But here's the amazing part, that if this 30 days were all that there was of the second Trump presidency, it would be by itself the most consequential presidency in generations. And I believe that. For the rest of our lives, President Trump's example of energy and alacrity in office will be the standard by which all future presidents will be judged. Interestingly, Alexander Hamilton in Federalist, I believe number 70, wrote, and this is not common, but finding this was pretty remarkable. Alexander Hamilton wrote, Federalist number 70, that energy in the executive is a leading character in the definition of good government. And my friends, energy in the executive is precisely what Donald Trump has and exhibits. This, I think, is key to understanding him and his place in American history. He is not a departure from the American tradition. His critics who charge him with that understand neither our country nor our purpose. He is a fulfillment of that tradition and a restoration of it. It is no accident in that light that the coalition he now brings together in this decade is a reassembly of the original Republican coalition of the 1850s. Working men from all ethnicities and backgrounds dedicated to the principles of free soil and free labor, and endorsing a suite of policies that in the 1850s included national greatness, territorial expansion. That one's pretty great, isn't it? The Gulf of America, the 51st state. I mean, can't make it up. A robust tariff regime, a strong military, and American supremacy. And of course, a definitive focus, and I'm gonna kind of wrap here with this since it's my new role, 6 days in, a definitive focus upon agriculture as the foundational enterprise and constitutive pursuit of our republic. What a blessing. That program, my friends, is Trumpian, but it is not just that. It is Lincolnian, it is Jacksonian, it is Jeffersonian, and maybe even most of all, it is Hamiltonian. But here's the point. The presidency of Donald J. Trump is as American as it gets. In fact, it was precisely that original American Republican coalition of the 1850s, when in power in the 1860s, established the United States Department of Agriculture, which it is now my privilege to helm. Our founders understood that ag and its way of life is essential to the sustenance of our democratic values and civics. They knew that the American that works the land, that survives on his own labor, that is inviolate in his home and his work, that is independent in his daily life, and that must govern himself in the best vision of our American founders. My friends, we have a lot of work to do to take this country back. We are 30 days in with a lifetime and lifetimes to go, with leaders like President Trump and Governor Greg Abbott, with organizations like the Texas Public Policy Foundation, with people like you who are unwilling to ever take no for an answer, even in the most improbable causes, which is saving the country, that we will win. God bless you all. God bless America. Thank you so much. What a joy to be home. Thank you all.
How about Brooke Rollins? You know, when she called me on, I think it was November 23rd, from a parking lot in Mississippi to tell me that she had just been, the president was about to appoint her as Secretary of Agriculture on her way to an Aggie game. We won't mention about what happened at the game, but I was like, well, of course you're going to be Secretary of Agriculture. And, you know, I don't know that the USDA knows what has hit them. I don't know that your security detail knows what has hit them yet. They're only a week in. But y'all, I had really beautiful hair before I met Brooke Rollins, so just be careful. But thank you, Brooke. Thank you. All right, so, you know, as Brooke said, you know, Texas is leading the way, and you hear time and time again that we're leading the way. And we're leading in entrepreneurialism. Great rockets are launched to the stars from Cameron County, Texas, and from Culberson County, Texas. The great and good of Silicon Valley have uprooted themselves from the pleasant weather of Silicon Valley to really enjoy Central Texas summers. And why? Because of what's happening here in the state. You know, the frontiers of artificial intelligence have pushed forward by minds who root themselves now in Texas soil, live in Texas communities, and increasingly dream big Texas dreams. Texas is leading the way in liberty. It is Texas that nearly alone kept alive the shape and aspiration of a constitutional order during the depths of the last 4 years. And it is Texas that refused to submit to Washington, D.C., grown arrogant and overbearing, and fought back in both law and politics. And it is Texas in which the populist movement that became the Make America Great Again movement coalesced. And it is Texas which told the federal government to take a hike, and if they wouldn't protect their border, then Texas would. Texas is so dynamic, so attractive, and so flourishing that, in fact, I just read this weekend that in 20 years or less, we will be the most populous state in the country. Because in Texas, this is where the American future is forged. But who is responsible for all of this? Well, principal credit, of course, goes to the people of Texas, who, unlike much of the country, never forget their inheritance of liberty, nor the need to fight for it. But credit goes to someone else as well. Our American founders understood well the necessity of a singular figure in the Republic who would express and execute the people's will with energy and assurance. For them and their generation, that man was George Washington, the indispensable man, without whom the great events of that era would never have come to pass. Well, in Texas today, we have our own indispensable man. For all the great and good Texas does and is, all of it has required an active defense and a vision that grasps that Texas is the arena where our future is made. And it has required in one office in particular, the office of governor. In Greg Abbott, we have a governor with that vision, that strength, that purpose, and that energy. He is our indispensable man without whom all the promise and dynamism of Texas now might never come to pass. In my years of working with him at the foundation, I first knew him as a politician, then as a leader, then as a partner, and now I know him as a friend. And I can tell you, he is the first rank in every one of those categories. When we talk about our aspirations for Texas, just know that those aspirations are possible because of Governor Greg Abbott. I could spend all day telling you about what his leadership has meant and enabled in the state, but you want to hear him speak, not me, so I'll let him do that. But I did want to share just a few things. Texas has a secure border today because of Greg Abbott. Texas has ended genital mutilation of children because of Greg Abbott. And Texas has some of the most robust protections for life in the nation because of Greg Abbott. And Texas is going to have universal school choice and education freedom and the best education system in Texas because of Governor Greg Abbott. He is our indispensable man, our successor to Sam Houston, and that's the governor I'm proud to call a partner and a friend. Please help me welcome our governor, Greg Abbott. So many of you may or may not know this, but the farmers and the Cowboys can be friends, right? The Aggies and the Longhorns can be friends. And the governor and I might have made a little wager on what happened on November 30th, and now it's time to pay my due. So, Governor, I'll turn it over to you.
So, Sindelar was talking real big, trash talking the Longhorns, and was emphatic about the way the Aggies were going to crush the Longhorns when they reunited their game, especially because the game was being played in Kyle Field. No way would the Aggies lose there. And I said, put your money where your mouth is. Put up or shut up. And I set the terms of the deal. I said, if A&M wins, I'll wear a maroon jacket. If Texas wins, Sindelar has to wear a burnt orange jacket. The eyes of Texas are upon you all the livelong day. There's a reason why Sindelar is against the expansion of gambling in the state of Texas. And he's wearing it right now. There you go.
Thank you, Governor.
You cannot take it off for an entire year.
I promise not to take it off till you leave today. All right, thank you, Governor.
Give it up for Greg Sindelar. Doing an absolutely fabulous job, and before she takes off, I want to express my gratitude for Brooke Rollins in so many ways. But just think how cool it is that TPPF was created here, and you are able to create and perpetuate so many transformative policies. But as was pointed out earlier, policies is only one aspect of it. It's the people that's another aspect. And you've been able to also generate great leaders from TPPF, now reaching the height of federal government leadership, and Brooke Rollins serving as your Secretary of Agriculture. Now, if you could, I got to share with you, I would like to share with you something I would like you to take back to President Trump. So we are proudly going along with what President Trump mandated, and is now policy of the state of Texas to identify the Gulf as the Gulf of America. But share with the president that we did it only because we were forced to do it, because I had a far better idea. Right. We all know it's the Gulf of Texas. The other thing about Brooke, and listen, we actually had a lot of fun. So it was Brooke and Helen Kerwin. You were right there moments ago. Where's Helen right now?
She's gone back to the floor.
Oh, go back to the floor. Already back working. But listen, we crisscrossed your hometown territory. Voter after vote, city after city, community after community, talking to the people on the ground about what mattered most to them. And what mattered most to them was electing someone like Helen Kerwin to represent the values of that district. So congrats to Helen Kerwin. Congrats to your mom. So there's several things I want to cover today. Two, I just want to make a couple of short comments about and devote most of my time to school choice. One point that I know is very important to everybody in this room and incredibly important to every Texan outside this room, and that is that we must deliver meaningful property tax cuts this session. But here's the deal. You know, we spent $18 billion last session. We have lined up at least $10 billion more this session. Pouring more money at this cause of trying to buy down property tax rates or increase homestead exemptions, whatever the case may be, is not going to get a return on our investment. As long as we have these local taxing jurisdictions go behind our back and increasing your property taxes even more. That must end this session. One of the strategies we have, and we need more than one, but one strategy that we must pass this session, and that is to say that no taxing jurisdiction in the state of Texas can increase your property taxes without getting 2/3 vote of the people in favor of that proposition. That vote must take place in November, and it must have at the end of the proposition the statement, if you vote yes for this proposition, it will increase your property taxes in Texas. No more property tax increases in Texas is what we need. One quick note that was brought up by Greg Sindelar about the board. I want you to understand the order of magnitude of the change that we've been through in just a 2-year time period. About 2 years ago, in Eagle Pass, Texas, there's a city park there that the Biden administration was processing up to 5,000 illegal immigrants a day. We shut that down by wiring it completely shut. And now there are crossing, on average, less than one person a day crossing in that area. But now that we're working in collaboration with President Trump, we see on average across the entire state of Texas, less than an average of 150 people crossing the border a day. This is game-changing. It's never been this low. And we owe President Trump and his team like Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. You got Tom Homan. You know, a real border czar doing a job of securing the border. People are doing things unlike ever before. The border is in great hands for the next 4 years. My work with the Trump administration is that President Trump and I both know one thing. In 4 years, he is gone. He will do a great job over the next 4 years to make sure we secure the border. Our goal is to ensure that over the next 4 years, we do a great job of preparing the border for security for the next 40 years in the great state of Texas. But speaking of the next 40 years, listen, the reality is the next 40 years, the future of our state is going to be hinged in a meaningful way to what we do in this state in educating the next generation of Texans. And that's why I am all in on ensuring that we use multiple strategies to put Texas on a pathway to do a better job than ever before in the history of our state to improve education. Along those lines, you all know what's going on with regard to school choice. But we all must appreciate and comprehend and recognize Texas history when it's made. Because earlier this week in San Antonio, Texas, at a school choice event at a Christian school there, Texas history was made. On that night, Speaker was there. Speaker Dustin Burrows was there. And when he got up on the stage to introduce me, he said something that no speaker in the long and illustrious history of the Texas has ever said. He raised his hand and said that he, as Speaker, supports school choice in the state of Texas. He told the audience that he has the votes in the Texas House to pass school choice this session. That being said, let's talk about a reality. The reality is that those who are entrenched in the status quo do not want to see school choice because it disrupts the monopoly that they have in the education system. As a result, the monopolists, the educators who are anti-school choice, they're going to fight to the bitter end. They're going to do whatever they can, say whatever they can, to try to discourage House members to vote in favor of school choice. But you can tell that we are winning. You can tell that the fight is over because there is a threshold in this process that shows you the end is near. And that is when your opponents have nothing else to resort themselves to other than lying about the facts. This isn't the first time this happened. Remember what happened in the presidential campaign. The last 2 months of that campaign, all Kamala Harris did was lie about Donald Trump. She didn't have any valid policy positions herself. All she could do is lie about Trump. And how did that turn out? Kamala got creamed in that election. Right now, the only thing happening by the opposition is lie after lie after lie, or let's be charitable about it, they're just completely uninformed about what they're talking about. That being said, what I wanted to do today was, for one, to provide clarity on some of the issues. I know you know them, but those people in the back may not know the clarity on the issues. Another thing, and that is I've been meeting with Texas House members, and especially with the freshmen. And the freshmen are experiencing something for the first time. They're getting emails or notes or text or phone calls by teacher union members registering their antagonism to school choice. And they said they wanted to be armed with the answers and the responses to deal with that. They themselves wanted to know what the information was. They wanted to have the comfort of knowing they were in the right, but also be well enough informed that they could respond to their own constituents. So I told these members, why don't you give to me what are some of the most pressing questions that you have, and I will use my opportunity at TPPF with not just a wide audience here, but a wider audience back there to explain to Texas what the questions are and what the real answers are. question, number one. Is school choice going to pull money out of the public school system? Another way of phrasing is school choice going to defund public education in the state of Texas? In a word, no. The reason for that is multifold. There is funding that goes to public schools, and that's one pot of money. There's a separate pot of money that doesn't have anything whatsoever to do with public school funding that's set aside to go to school choice. It's the same concept as this. Just as we set aside other money for roads, for water, for power, for the other things that we pay for in the state, we can set aside money for school choice. The argument being made by those against school choice would be the same as saying, well, listen, when you're taking money to build roads, you're taking money away from public schools. When you're taking money to build power, you're taking away money to build public schools. Just completely false. The two are completely separate pots of money. And then as it occurs, this concept, what people are talking about and the way they talk about it is that they say, well, you can fund public education or you're going to fund school choice. You can't do both. Completely false. We have the resources and we have the ability, and we are going to fully fund both public education as well as school choice. The magnitude of each pot is this. When this session ends, we're going to be providing more funding for public education than ever before in the history of the state of Texas. We're going to pay the highest average teacher salary ever in the history of the state of Texas. Per student funding will be higher than it's ever been in the history of the state of Texas. At the same time, we're going to set aside enough that Texas will start a school choice program that will be the largest start to any school choice program in the history of the United States of America. Question number two is school choice only for the rich? Completely false narrative. The rich already have school choice. It's others that don't have school choice. And what this funding provides is the opportunity for everybody, from the lowest poverty level to mid-income level to anybody who wants access to school choice. It expands the scope of those who are now going to be able to access the school choice system. Knowing that a parent of a child in a school may be fully impoverished, but they need a different choice for their child. They're now going to have the ability to tap into that choice. It also does more than any other program to open up school choice opportunities to our Hispanic students, our black students, the other minority students in the past would not have been able to afford to go to a school choice of their option. Next question. Why will children enrolled in the school choice program receive $10,000 per child when the state only pays $6,160 per student in public school? Again, complete false premise. The state does not provide $6,160 for public education students. The average funding per student in public schools in the state of Texas is about $15,000, 1/3 more per student than going into the school choice program. And so there are complete false narratives. The way this is argued is educators talk about what's called the basic allotment. The basic allotment is that $6,100 figure. The basic allotment, as I pointed out, is only just above 1/3 of the overall funding that goes to schools per student funding for them to be able to pay their bills. And so it's a complete false narrative. Next question. How will lower income parents afford to send their children to private schools with $10,000 when the average private school tuition is far higher than that? That's false information. The average private tuition among our schools across the entire state of Texas is roughly about $10,000. The median per our tuition per student at private schools across the state is about $9,000. The average is a lot higher because there's some schools that are $30,000, even $40,000 per student. Bottom line is there's going to be an abundance of schools across the entire state that families are going to be able to afford without coming out of pocket a single penny. I'll give you some examples of just schools that I was at recently. I was at a school in Athens, Texas, where the tuition was about $8,000 per student. And so that would cost less than the $10,000 it's going to. I was at a private school in Edinburgh, Texas, where the average tuition was a tiny bit less than $3,000 per student. And you see variances like that across the state. I know for a fact because I've been at these schools. There is an abundance of private schools across the state that parents are going to be able to afford with the private school allotment that's going to be provided under this legislation. Next question. I cannot overemphasize the question and the answer to the question enough, so I'll probably say it twice. I get this question everywhere I go, and everywhere I go when I provide the answer, I get nothing but disbelief by the parents that I'm talking to. Question. Will homeschool families still have control over what they teach their children? And I'll just broaden that. Will they have control, period? Know this. So school choice families fit into two categories. Those who want to participate in the school choice program or those who don't. If you're a homeschool parent, totally your option what you do. But know this, if you choose not to participate, the state of Texas is not going to be involved in any way whatsoever. What you're doing right now will remain exactly the same. No involvement, period. Second, if you decide to tap into the school choice program for your homeschool children, the state of Texas is not going to regulate or change what you're teaching to your child at this time. The parent knows best what to teach that child. The parent will remain in control of educating their children. Next question. Under school choice, will government intervene in a private school's hiring or firing standards, student behavioral standards, or choice of curriculum? In a word, no. The state is not going to be involved in dictating what private schools are going to be teaching. Next question. Why aren't private schools held to the same standards as public schools? I'm going to give an answer a little bit contrary to what people think. There are some different standards. For example, public schools get more funding per student. Public schools get to issue bonds to pay for buildings and stadiums and other projects that private schools do not get. At the same time, there are some, maybe even many private schools that have more rigorous education programs than maybe the public school from which the child comes. The reality is the purpose of school choice isn't to be a duplicate of the public education that a family wants to leave, it's to provide an alternative to that education program. Next question. How will rural students have access to school choice when there are no private schools in their area? Another false argument. I mentioned before, listen, I was over in Athens, Texas. I categorize Athens, Texas as rural. If you haven't been there, go to Athens, Texas, and I think you'll agree it's rural. And listen, they have a robust private school there. I'll tell you a story also about the principal of the private school there. The principal of the private school there had been the principal of a public school there and left the public school to go to the private school, and his first grade son was in the public school in Athens, Texas. And what this principal said is that when he came home from school and his first grade son started rattling off four-letter word after four-letter word after four-letter word, the dad got a pen out and wrote down every word his son was saying. When his wife got home, who's an educator herself, they talked about what was going on. They recognized that they weren't wealthy, they didn't have the resources to be able to send their child to another school. But they also recognized it was not right for them as a family to keep their child in a school that was learning that type of stuff. And so they went to, or through the financial sacrifice, to do what was right and send their first grader to a school that was going to match the values of their parents. This proved two things. School choice actually is very effective in rural Texas. But also school choice is not for millionaires. It's to parents like this who live paycheck by paycheck, who are going to have an equal opportunity now to send their child to a school that parents believe is best for them. Also, this argument, if you hear this, this argument, oh, there's no alternative in rural Texas. If you can follow along with me for a second, I'm going to just, it took about 10 minutes just to come up with this list, which is like no time, meaning if I spent more time, the list would be far longer than this. These are small little towns in Texas that are either small towns or considered to be a kind of far out, a distant town, where they all have private schools. Alpine, Athens, Angleton, Alice, Bulverde, Brownswood, not Brownsville, but Brownswood, Edna, Dalhart, Livingston, Paris, Keene. Who knows where Keene, Texas is? Pretty good, I guess a good one. Palestine, Liberty, Sweetwater, Bernie, Jefferson, Gonzales, not Jefferson County, but Jefferson, Texas, Gonzales, Kingsville, Wharton, Warda. Who knows where Warda is? All right, there we go. Are you the principal of the school there? No. Cuero, Snyder, Castroville, Seminole, Floresville. That's just a starting list. The reality is there's a lot of schools in small town Texas that a lot of people are unaware of. And that's under our current system. Supply will create demand. If we are able to establish school choice, we'll have far more schools out there available. It's just going to happen. Another thing in that regard, and this is kind of a detail embedded in all of the school choice legislation that works particularly well in rural settings, and that's the ability to create what are called micro schools. There's kind of another synonymous name for it, like pods and things like that, that parents can get together and form these micro schools in a rural setting in the state of Texas and make sure they're going to be able to educate the children the way that they want to educate their children. Next question. This was interesting. Where do political leaders stand on school choice? Those who are at the national level who support school choice are Donald Trump, Ronald Reagan, and J.D. Vance. Those at the national level who oppose school choice are Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and Kamala Harris. At the congressional level, those who support school choice, Ted Cruz, Tim Scott, and Rand Paul. Those who oppose school choice, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Ocasio-Cortez. So, as I know there are House members out here today, do you want to stand with Trump, with Reagan, with Vance, or do you want to stand with Biden, Harris, and Obama? I think the pathway is clear. Another question that comes up is, has school choice worked in other states? And the answer is yes, and robustly. Listen, school choice has been working in more than 30 states across the entire country. And one thing that we've seen is there's been no decimation of the public schools in those areas. Public schools haven't collapsed, they haven't been eliminated. In fact, in many instances, the public schools have been enhanced. I'm going to tell you about a study that I saw that is now 2 years old, and I'm sorry I didn't do my homework and catch up about what happened last year. But 2 years ago, there was a report that came out about the schools, the public schools in the United States. that were performing the best at the high school level. Which states had the top schools in the top 100, the most schools in the top 100? Number one, I'll forget the orders, Florida and Arizona. They had the most public schools in the top 100. What did Florida and Arizona have in common? Exactly, the most robust school choice programs. It shows you can have robust school choice programs and at the very same time have some of the best public schools in the United States of America. Two more issues. Well, one is, why do parents need school choice? It's not just a matter of, for a parent, of saying, well, listen, I want to take my child and take the money and be able to go to some private school. More often than not, there's actually a catalyst reason for that parent making that decision, like what I explained earlier with regard to the principal in Athens whose son was coming home using four-letter words. As I've traveled around the state, I've heard so many parents articulate so many different reasons why they were desperate and urgently needing to remove their child. It includes what I call moral-based issues. Parents disagree with the morality or lack of morality in the public school setting. There are situations that occur in every region in the state of Texas where children are bullied. If you're a working mom doing your dead best to put food on the table and pay the bills, maybe working two jobs, doing the best to take care of your child at school, knowing that your child at school is being bullied relentlessly. You may come home from work, put your child to bed, and cry yourself to sleep, feeling helpless to be able to rescue your child. The most important thing to you from the bullying that's taken place. School choice gives that mom the option to choose a better, safer pathway for her child. And then something came up this past week that is an echo of something that comes up literally every week. It was a video from Bel Air High School, which is in Houston area, and the video was of a woman with a group who's reading a letter from a parent there who wanted to stay anonymous, and what the parent wrote in her letter was how her child in school, she had teachers and educators who were assisting and aiding her sexual transition against the will of parents, even trying to hide the information from the parents. That is wrong. No parent should have their child transitioned or harmed by an educator. The simplest way to look at it is this. If you were the parent of that child, do you think that you should have the school choice ability to move your child to another school? Absolutely yes. Every parent in Texas should have that same right. The last question, the last issue. What is the goal of school choice? I'll ask the same question of what is the goal of these teacher unions who are fighting against school choice? If you listen to what they say, they articulate a single goal: money, 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 money. All they want is more money. I think our goal in education needs to be far bigger than just money. Our goal must be to take the actions needed to put Texas on a pathway to having the best education for the kids of our state in the United States of America. We are indisputably ranked #1 in the United States in so many different categories. It's time we set our sights on a new #1 standard. Texas must rank #1 for educating our kids, and school choice is a path to achieving that goal. We would not be where we are with the advancements that we've made on school choice without TPPF. But the members, those involved in policy, those involved in working with the Capitol, but the supporters, Everybody in this room has had a role to play to make sure that we've gotten to the point where we are today. But we've still got more to do. We're going to make sure that we do fulfill what the Speaker said, and that's to ensure he has the votes to get this done. When we do that, we're going to have a Texas-sized party celebrating school choice in the state of Texas. Thank you all. God bless you all, and God bless the great state of Texas. Thank you, man. Thank you all. Appreciate you.
All right, how about another round of applause for our great governor? And I appreciate everyone's their willingness to look at me in burnt orange, especially my wife, who's a little repulsed right now.